So, you want to get into the Devil May Cry series? Well, you're in luck, because with Devil May Cry's Netflix show bringing so much attention to the franchise, now is the perfect chance to give the series a try. As a Devil May Cry content creator, one of the most frequent comments I get revolves around asking how best to start playing Devil May Cry. I'll get questions such as, I want to play the games, should I start with Devil May Cry 5? What order do I need to play the games in? Should I play the reboot? Can I skip Devil May Cry 2? So this video is going to serve as my definitive recommendation on how to get started in your Devil May Cry journey and find out which order works best for you. This video won't contain any story spoilers for any of the games. I'm just going to tell you the basics of each game, where to get them, and which version you should play to get the best possible experience. For the sake of simplicity, we're also going to avoid talking about any of the mobile games, and more specifically Devil May Cry Peak of Combat, since those are irrelevant to the overall narrative of Devil May Cry, and your time would just be better spent playing the main games. I'm going to begin with the obvious route first. Playing the games in release order. Doing this means you'll start with Devil May Cry on the PS2. Yes, I know going back to the PS2 is less than ideal, but it has such a novelty to it. The game itself holds up well, and is a fantastic starting point that the rest of the series builds upon. This is also the most unique entry in the series because this is the only game that was directed by the original creator, Hideki Kamiya, coming off of directing Resident Evil 2 and wanting to make a stylish action game for the sequel. And you can see the original vision of this game being developed as Resident Evil 4 with the fixed camera angles, tight corridors, the overall gothic feel, the puzzles, gimmicky set pieces, and even some enemy-specific death animations. Because of that though, there are admittedly a lot of things here that could be considered dated, as combining the fixed and changing camera angles with the fast-paced action and precise platforming unfortunately doesn't always feel great. With that being said, it's still very good, even if it isn't my personal favorite. Playing this game on the PS2 is the only way you can play the original untouched release of the game, as the updated version is exclusive to the Devil May Cry HD collection, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You can get this on eBay for roughly $10 to $20, but it's also guaranteed to be at any used game store local to you, and you'll likely get it for less than $10 that way. Next, we move on to Devil May Cry 2 on the PS2, a direct sequel to the first game and the black sheep of the main timeline. Your average DmC fan will likely tell you to skip this one, but you really shouldn't. It's quite fascinating how badly they fumbled the sequel after the success of the first game by doing the exact opposite of what made it work so well, and is something that really needs to be experienced by playing it yourself. There is still a lot to like about this game, with the multiple characters, the new mechanics like wall running and twosome time, which will be expanded upon in the next game, customizing your devil trigger, and the reoccurring Bloody Palace mode that has you fighting wave after wave of enemies. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that even though the game at times incentivizes you to stand across the room and shoot everything, you don't always have to play that way. There are fun ways to engage with the game, but choosing not to do them is obviously going to result in a miserable experience, and I am easily just as guilty of that. I have completed a handful of playthroughs throughout the years, and I feel qualified enough to say that it is worth playing through Dante and Lucia's campaign at least once. And if you beat the game's hard mode, or by inputting a cheat code in the main menu, you can play through the game as Trish with the Devil May Cry 1 moveset, which feels leagues better by comparison, and is personally my favorite way to play DmC 2. You can find Devil May Cry 2 on PS2 for around $10 to $20, which is around the same price as Devil May Cry 1 on both eBay and your local used game store. Next is Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening on the PS2, a prequel set about 10 years prior to the first game. This is the game that introduces the style system and expands on customization of your weapon loadouts that will be the basis for Dante's gameplay in all of the main games going forward, and is commonly referred to as the best game in the series for both its combat and story, featuring Dante, his twin brother Virgil, and Lady, with excellent cutscene direction that makes these sequences so fun and memorable. It still has fixed camera angles, but it works very well with the level design as you explore the Tema Negru Tower, and I can't overstate just how good the combat is. This game has a reputation for being not only the hardest game in the series, but one of the hardest video games of all time. This is because the normal difficulty of the game in the West is actually the game's hard mode. This, along with an unforgiving checkpoint system, means you'll have to be on the top of your game to overcome the challenges presented. We also have Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition, which includes a plethora of new features on top of the base game. It adjusts the difficulty difficulty so that normal mode is actually normal, adding in a very hard mode difficulty, giving you the option to adjust the checkpoint system to make it more forgiving, introducing turbo mode to make the game play 20% faster, and adding Dante's twin brother Virgil as a playable character. For the Nintendo Switch exclusively, you'll also have the option to play the game in what is called freestyle mode, where Dante has access to all of his styles and weapons at the same time, as opposed to only being able to select one style and 2 weapons of each type at a time. Personally speaking, I think this is the best way to play the game, but only after you've played through the original game mode first, as having everything accessible at one time can feel very overwhelming, especially for a first-time player. You also get access to a local co-op Bloody Palace with a friend, which I have personally never tried because I don't have any local friends to play with me that are near my skill level. Just like with the other 2 games, you can find either the original or special edition of Devil May Cry 3 on the PS2 for around $10 to $20. The un-HDified special edition was also available on Steam, but was unfortunately delisted this past year. There may still be a way to purchase a Steam key from a third-party website like Fanatical, but your mileage may vary based on availability. As far as which version to get, it just makes sense to get the special edition release for Virgil and Turbo mode alone, alongside having the option to play with the original settings anyway. And if you have a Nintendo Switch, it's basically a no-brainer to purchase a copy on there for the freestyle mode and co-op Bloody Palace. Before we move on to the next game, I'm also going to talk about the alternative option of the Devil May Cry HD collection, which includes Devil May Cry's 1, 2, and 3 special edition in one package, and upscales the games to full HD quality and 60 FPS. This is the most convenient way to play the 3 games, as the collection is available both digitally and physically across all platforms, and also includes artwork and tracks from the series up to when it was first released in 2012 for the 10-year anniversary. It's worth noting that there are some occasional weird visual issues with this collection though, mainly missing or corrupted graphics and sound effects. It's nothing major, but it is noticeable, which is why I would recommend playing the original releases first if given the chance. You can find this collection on Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS3, PS4, and Steam for $30 digitally, and typically around $10 to $20 physically. It also goes on sale digitally pretty frequently for about $10, which is a huge steal for all 3 games, even if you own 1 through 3 already on the PS2. If you want these games on the Switch, they're available separately in their HD versions for $20 each. I think they go on sale every once in a while, but given that it's Nintendo, I doubt the discount is anything too substantial. As a Capcom creator, I also have this collection available on my Nexus store, which is a storefront for selling digital Steam keys, mainly titles affiliated with Capcom. I'll leave a link for the store in the description for those who are interested in checking it out, and if you make a purchase of a Capcom title through said store, it helps the channel out immensely. Think of me as the GameStop that makes a percentage of the sale. Moving into the next console generation, we have Devil May Cry 4 on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, featuring Nero and Dante as playable characters. Since this game was many people's introduction to the series, as this was the first time Devil May Cry was on another platform besides PlayStation, Nero gets a moveset that is perfect for newcomers while still having high-level tech for advanced players, and Dante gets an expanded arsenal where you have access to all of your weapons and styles at the same time. The unfortunate thing about this game is that it wasn't given the proper dev time and budget necessary for the next generation, so there were many instances where they had to cut corners in order to ship the game out on time. The main culprit being forced to play through the entire game backwards when you switch to Dante. That aside, the story is pretty nice and the cutscene direction is once again spectacular, and the best thing about this game without question is the combat, especially when played at an advanced level. Exclusive to the Steam version, we have the return of Turbo mode, an uncapped framerate setting, and legendary Dark Knight mode, which floods the screen with an insane number of enemies. You can find it on eBay for about $10, but at any used game store for as long as I can remember, it's been priced at less than $5. And just like with Devil May Cry 3, it is unfortunately delisted on Steam, so your mileage will vary based on availability. Since we're already talking about Devil May Cry 4, I'm also going to pair this section with the special release edition of the game, even though it came out after DmC Devil May Cry and its definitive edition, mainly because this is the most convenient way to play Devil May Cry 4 nowadays, unless you go out of your way to get the original. 4's special edition includes Virgil, Lady, and Trish as playable characters, and for consoles adds in Turbo mode and legendary Dark Knight from the original PC release, on top of a few minor quality of life updates that make the campaigns less of a slog to go through. Unfortunately, minus a few low budget cutscenes, the levels for these characters are just the ones from the main campaign, which is more than a little disappointing given that this was released 8 years after the original. I can't speak for everybody, but even in my most recent marathon of the series, I got pretty tired of playing the same levels 3 different times with all the characters in a campaign that already recycles the levels halfway through. For most people, the Special Edition is likely going to be better for the convenience and additional characters, but it's far from being objectively better than the original. A lot of high-level players actually prefer the original version because of small changes like hitboxes that mess with you at a higher level, DMC4 vanilla running a lot better than Special Edition on PC with no input lag, and on PC specifically, there's a mod for the original version called DMC4 Hook, which offers more features and training options compared to SC's DDMK. The game was released physically exclusively in Japan, so unless you want to import it, you can only get the Special Edition digitally on PS4, Xbox One, and Steam for $25. However, it frequently goes on sale for about $7, and once again, the Steam version is available on my Nexus store. Now we turn our attention to DmC Devil May Cry, a reboot of the series developed by Ninja Theory. I said earlier that Devil May Cry 2 was the black sheep of the main timeline, and this game falls in the same category for the whole franchise. It's a complete reboot of the series made by a Western developer that changes everything about the story and origins of the Sons of Sparta, and has gameplay and control schemes that are still good, but are fundamentally very different from the games that came before. There's also a heavy emphasis on platforming and movement, with level designs that are ironically the best in the entire series. A lot of great things are in the reboot, and I have always been a defender of this game, because all things considered, it is a good game in its own right. But at the end of the day, it could be best described as a pale imitation of the main series, and most of what it does well is directly because it was influenced by the other games. With the way things played out, this game currently doesn't have a follow-up, but I still recommend giving it a chance by approaching it with an open mind and understanding that it is just a different take on Devil May Cry, much like the Netflix adaptation. You can get the original DmC Devil May Cry on Xbox 360 or PS3, once again for about $10 on eBay, or around $5 at a used game store. But it's also available on Steam for $30 and goes on sale very frequently for about $7. You can also purchase a Steam key for it through the Nexus store that I mentioned earlier. The game also has cosmetic DLC, as well as the Virgil's Downfall campaign, all of which are relatively cheap as well. A definitive edition was also released on PS4 and Xbox One, and like the name indicates, is the definitive way to play the game for modern consoles. The whole game is upscaled to HD quality with 60 FPS, has some quality of life changes with gameplay. It includes additional modes that can be toggled on and off, such as Turbo Mode, Must Style Mode, Gods Must Die, and Hardcore Mode. It has all the DLC cosmetics included with an additional DMC1 Dante and DMC3 Virgil costume exclusive to this version, as well as the Virgil DLC and a Bloody Palace for Virgil. You can get the definitive edition of DmC Devil May Cry digitally for $40 and physically for about $20. And once again, the game goes on sale frequently digitally for less than $10. The unfortunate caveat is that this is a console exclusive release, and it's safe to assume at this point that PC players will never see these upgrades. Now we have our final game in the main series, Devil May Cry 5, the game that revived the franchise from the dead. A lot of people ask me if they can start here, and while I understand the convenience of starting with the game that looks and feels the best, you are actively doing yourself a disservice by playing this one first. Devil May Cry 5 is the finale to the Sons of Sparta story, and takes everything that the series has built upon since Devil May Cry 1, and puts it together in one package. It takes a multitude of different gameplay aspects from each of the games, including the reboot, and polishes them to make this the best looking and feeling game in the series. You have Nero, Dante, and newcomer V as playable characters in the main campaign, with brand new mechanics that evolve the gameplay flow of Nero and Dante, and V having a very interesting gameplay style for this genre. This is tied with DMC3 as my favorite game in the series, but that's largely in part because this is the best the series has to offer, and is one hell of a finale for the Sons of Sparta. You can get Devil May Cry 5 digitally for $30, but it frequently goes on sale for less than $10, which is also the price of an average physical copy. You can upgrade to the deluxe edition of the game that gives you more Devil Arms with Nero to play around with, and another version of Cavalier for Dante. And additionally, Virgil is available for purchase as a playable character. Both of these together will be about $15, but they also go on sale just as frequently and are absolutely worth the upgrade. All of this is also available on my Nexus store for PC users. There was also a special edition released for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X that includes the Virgil and Deluxe Edition DLCs, but also brings back Turbo Mode and Legendary Dark Knight. Additionally, It includes a high frame rate mode for 120 FPS, a high fidelity mode, a performance mode, and ray tracing, all of which can be toggled on and off. Not all of these options will work together, so you'll have to pick and choose which ones you want. Personally speaking, I will never willingly drop my frame rate below 60, and the addition of turbo mode means I will never take advantage of the high fidelity mode and ray tracing, unless a PS5 Pro enhancement patch comes in to fix that. You can buy the digital version of Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition for $40, but it goes on sale for about $10 frequently, just like the other games. The cost of a physical edition is a bit higher, around the $30 range, but that's likely because the game was released digitally first, and they didn't make as many copies for the physical release months later. So those are going to be a little harder to find. For those of you wondering how to get the extra features like turbo mode and LDK mode available on PC, you unfortunately can't without modding the vanilla game with the Saiyan collaborative cheat trainer, which can be found on Nexus Mods for those interested. And that's it for Route 1, which is basically just playing the games in release order and not skipping any of them. For the sake of convenience, you can play 1 through 3 Special Edition with the HD collection and getting whatever vanilla or Special Edition is available depending on if you're playing on console or PC. That brings us to Route 2, which will be playing the games in chronological order to follow the story of the games from start to finish. The order to play the games for this route will be as follows: Devil May Cry 3 when Dante is 19, Devil May Cry 1 which is 9 years later, Devil May Cry 2 which is about 3 to 6 years later, Devil May Cry 4 which is about another 3 to 4 years after that, and Devil May Cry 5 which is officially confirmed to be 5 years later. Since the DMC reboot is separate from the main timeline, I'd recommend playing it after Devil May Cry 4, since that will give you the least amount of whiplash when switching to it, and 5 will be the better finale for your playthrough. And finally, we have Route 3, which is the order that I played the games in when I was growing up, and is personally my definitive recommendation based on my own personal experience. And for this one, I'll go a little more in-depth to explain my reasoning. We start with Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition, which is not only a great starting point for the series as the first game in the timeline, but is still to this day one of the best action hack and slash games ever made. It hooks you right away with engaging action, has the most popular version of Dante, and insane technical depth that will be expanded upon in the next game you play, which is Devil May Cry 4. This introduces you to a new character with different moves, and upgraded Dante halfway through where you can use all of your weapons and styles at once, and this will give you the least amount of whiplash by having a similar gameplay feel instead of going back to DMC 1. There are references to the first game in here, but it is very easy to pick up on who the characters are and what their significance is. Not to mention that the introduction of Nero is best played after you play DMC 3 from a story perspective, since the implications made from that game's story will be fresh in your head. Up next is DMC Devil May Cry, the game that follows up Devil May Cry 4 in release order and was meant to replace the main series. After getting a good understanding of the general vibes of the main series, this is a good chance to experience the changes that were made for what was supposed to be the replacement of the main games. And like I said earlier, playing this now will give you the least amount of whiplash for the gameplay changes, playing only 2 games before the reboot instead of 4. This will also give you a small taste of what it was like to wait for so long to play the long-awaited sequel to Devil May Cry 4, and be given a reboot in its place. After this is when you should go back and play Devil May Cry 1. Seeing the origins of the series after experiencing the later games is such a treat. You will feel a little naked with your limited moveset, but that means you'll have to think outside of the box and focus on the fundamentals, and you'll be surprised when you experiment to find out what works in this game, especially if it's a move or mechanic that's much weaker in the later games. Playing this game now will also enhance your experience playing Devil May Cry 5 for both the story and the references. Next is when I would recommend playing Devil May Cry 2, since I think it's always best played after Devil May Cry 1 to set the appropriate expectations. You'll go into the game knowing it won't be the best experience compared to the other games, but it's guaranteed you'll get some enjoyment out of it with that mindset. I don't care what anyone says, do not skip this game. And you'll get more street cred from me if you beat Lucia's campaign, and obtain spiritual enlightenment if you go through it with Trish as well, which is still, in my opinion, the best way to play Devil May Cry 2. And finally, we have Devil May Cry 5, the long-awaited sequel to Devil May Cry 4. If you need a palate cleanser after playing Devil May Cry 2, I would jump into DMC 4 for a little bit to get readjusted to the combat, since 5 is a direct follow-up to that style of gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, this game is the finale to the Sons of Sparta story, so it only makes sense to play this this last no matter what. It's a perfect finale that wraps everything up nicely, but still leaves it open for a potential follow-up. And like I said previously, one of the reasons this is mine and most people's favorite is because it takes everything great about the series and puts it together in one package. It's almost unfair to tell people to play this last because of that, but trust me, it is worth the wait. And there you have it. Those are 3 of the best possible ways to play the Devil May Cry series, and which versions of the game you should play. I wanted to make this video specifically for the video games, but if there's enough interest, I'll make a separate video on all of the other forms of media Devil May Cry has taken, including but not limited to the anime, manga, comics, and guest appearances in other video games. Just let me know if that's something you would like to see down in the comments, since there's enough there to warrant its own video, which also helps to prevent this one from getting too bloated. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more content like this from me, you can subscribe and follow me on all of my other social media platforms, all of which house similar content that I have here on this channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Grave Gang YouTube members listed here on screen. If you want to be listed on my next video, plus a bunch of other rewards, become a YouTube member today. And if you want to watch another video of mine, you can check out any of the videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.